So Walpole Media, are you ready?
Patrick at Walpole Cable, are you guys ready, or Tamara?
Ready when you are.
Okay, just one last thing. You don't want to share your screen unless we are doing it intentionally. So, all right, I think we're ready to start. So I'll start to read the official words that I have to say. So thank everybody. This is the May 18th, 2020 Sewer and Water meeting. First, I have to read the executive order on remote participation. On Thursday, March 12, 2020, Governor Baker issued an order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20. That order, which effectively, immediately, and until it is rescinded or the state of emergency is terminated. We're calling this meeting to order at 1:30 p.m. on May 18th. The meeting will be done remotely. It will be televised on YouTube. I'm here supposed to announce all the meeting members who will be participating remotely due to the unprecedented time in the history of the Commonwealth. The governor has authorized remote participation for all public boards due to the emergency declaration order that was issued on March 12th, 2020. So attending the meeting is John Hassenjager, myself, Patrick Fasanello, Lisa and Marilyn from the collector's office, Glenn, Bernie, the superintendent, John Spillane, Jim Johnson, Scott Gustafson, Mary Frisbee, Jody, and Rick Mattson. So with that, the first thing, we didn't have it on the agenda, but the superintendent's report. You could tell us, Bernie, what has transpired in the past week. I've been updating the commissioners weekly from what you were telling me.
So, Bill, it's been pretty much status quo, and we've had 2 small service leaks, and everything else is steady as she goes.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Bernie? There being none. First thing that we wanted to cover was some of the status of the 40B projects. Burns Ave, Summer Street, and Diamond Hill Estates. You all got the package from Mary, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. Burns Ave, we've already made our comments months ago, and that the sewer and water was going to be connected out to Union Street, approximately where Pickerel Brook is. Subsequently, the developer has brought a property at the end of Brook Lane that'll allow him to extend his proposed development from 32 units to 40 units. Yep. I believe, Rick or Bernie, you could confirm this, but Brook Lane has both sewer and water.
It does, yes.
Okay, so he's, I'm assuming that he will be changing the way he's planning to, he'll no longer need to run his sewer and water out to Union Street. He'll connect to Brook Lane. Have you heard anything?
Correct, Bill. He just if I could, Bill, he sent in a revised plan, and Kyle had provided some comments that you do not yet have. So we'll get those to you for your next meeting.
Okay. Anyone have a question on Burns Ave? Okay. Being none, next one was Summer Street 40B. We have responded requesting a sewer and water peer review, that they pay connection fees. There's a number of items on the gallons per minute on various faucets, toilets, etc., with an overall max usage, daily usage of 600,000 gallons. The thing that just comes immediately to me is how that big project would be looped. So I don't know if we have any more additional information. I would think we'd certainly want to have those folks in to discuss the project, but I don't know how that's done remotely now. Jim Johnson, do you have any?
Bill, my suggestion on that is you guys could definitely do it via Zoom. We just had a site plan review an hour ago over Zoom, and you can invite them in and talk to them if you'd like, because we don't know when this whole thing's going to end, but your call.
Okay. Now, usually we have those big sheets that are like, 2 feet by 3 feet that we're looking at, which is going to be difficult. I don't know if the site plan reviews that you just had earlier today, how they handled.
No, this one was very basic, but if the developer wants to move forward, what I'd say is we could tell them we'll move forward if you provide us copies for the 5 commissioners and Rick and Bernie, so they can look at things before, and we'll get you it before your meeting. Does that, Rick and Bernie, do you guys sound okay to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a copy of the plans right now that Kyle gave me the other day, Jim. I've been going over them when time's been able to.
Okay.
All right. So I assume the commissioners would like to see, maybe it's not all the pages, but some of the significant pages. And the other question I have is, do we have any thoughts as to how this project would be looped?
They have proposed internal loops, Bill, which for all intents and purposes, impractical. They're useless.
Right.
So it's basically looping a pipe into itself. They have not given any indication that they're willing to go off-site to another connection to another street. I believe that we had said possibly Neponset Street. But,
Okay, that would be across the railroad tracks.
Right. They haven't yet done that. So.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments on Summer Street from the?
Just on the peer review thing, Bill.
Right.
We had solicited proposals from Weston and Sampson and Wright Pierce, one for water, one for sewer, for a peer review. Those were sent to Attorney Mackey, who in turn sent them to the project proponent. And my last correspondence with Mackey was that he had not yet heard back from the developer. So right now that's in limbo as to where they're going to go with those. The
Okay.
sewer one is pretty much far more complex than the water one.
Yeah.
Because they want to take it all the way to the interceptor. And I think there's a little reluctance and a little resistance on the part of the developer to fund it. So
Okay.
stay tuned for that.
Yep. Anyone else have any thought, comment?
One thing, on the, if they won't do the looping, or if they're hesitant, at least we can get the rights of way. I'd like that to be on the plan.
All right, just one thing, Mary, should we be announcing who's speaking, since if it's clear, I think to everybody who's on the call that Pat was just last speaking and Rick before him? Is that something that's required with remote participation?
Bill, just all the meetings I participated, no, you didn't announce.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm running these, I usually serve as the moderator, but it's your call. But I think this is fine.
All right, let's continue. Anyone else, Pat, other than the comment you just made? Okay, going on to the next one, which is Diamond Hill Estates, and I don't believe we've had any information presented to us on this. I think it first came in after we'd stopped having meetings. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes.
This has been around for a while.
Yeah, I recognize the name, but I don't remember ever seeing any information on it, so.
The only information we got was from conservation so far.
Yeah.
All right. There seemed to be, I read a little bit about it. It seemed that there's an opportunity to loop the water, and there is sewer available. Is that correct, Bernie or Rick?
Yep, the sewer available, and we've asked them to loop the water. I'm not sure if they're gonna be able to do it because it would have to go out to Summit Street, I believe. Summit Street? Summit Ave? Summit Ave, excuse me.
Okay.
Is there, this is Pat, is there an impediment in the way? There seems to be on the chart here, a blank spot. Is that a problem, or is that why they may not be able to do it?
This is Rick. He does not own the property that he would have to cross.
Okay.
So I assume we're not sure who owns it, and it would, this would be another project that we want to have somebody come in and talk to us, I assume, commissioners?
Oh, well, I was thinking, the property owner, that would be the impediment to connecting, the loop. In the past, we've talked to those people, and many times they've given us, an easement, through their property. So could somebody in the town talk to these people and ask them if they'd be willing to give us an easement down one of the property lines so that we could do it for the benefit of the town?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else on Diamond Hill Estates? Okay, the next item is correspondence number 1, and I've provided the monthly sewer and water revenue numbers for the year, as well as the second one is the water production numbers. From the revenue numbers, it looks for this fiscal year that we won't meet the targets that we set when we were setting the rates. But Jody has indicated to me that other revenues that we collect are higher than planned, and we should offset the shortfall. Is that correct, Jody? You're on mute.
So right now, it looks like everything's going to be okay for the end of the fiscal year. I think that we need to be very mindful of the expenses that we are spending. So we still just need to be very careful.
We do have 2 months of revenue that is still to come in, and just looking at them, they're not big months in terms of they tend to be late winter, early spring months. So it's not going to be large dollar amounts from revenue. And the pumping continues to show that, like for the last 16 months, we've been roughly 10% below what we've been in the past. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
is there an expectation of what we're going to ask town meeting for as far as the shortfall is concerned? I think I saw $250,000. Is that the number, or are we still working on finding that?
Jim Johnson.
So Rick and I talked about this right before we got on here. We're extremely tight. It's Jody, Rick, and I, when we get together last week, it seems as though I think it's the user fees where it was able to make up for the shortfall in the projected rates. But Glenn, I don't want to give you a definitive answer right this second. The municipal relief package that was passed allows us to take the excess retained earnings money and cover it as a shortfall. So we were going to cover this article, I think it was Article 7.
Right.
That's not necessary now. We're allowed, whatever you guys run over, they're just going to dip into retained earnings. And that's the way DLS has advised Jody that they'll look at this. So Jody, did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So Glenn, it's really tight. I'd be really happy if it did need to dip into the retained earnings, but compared to what we were looking at back in December, we're
Yeah,
all
around 700,000, that type of in order. So we're going to come close if we don't just make it. So, anyone else have any other questions on this? Okay. The next item was the Cub Scouts Jarvis Farm request for June 6th and 7th. And Glenn, you just sent me a note saying that they're hoping to do it in September, and I assume they'll send in another request.
Yeah, that's right. The Cub Scouts aren't really doing any organized activities right now. All activities are suspended. And so we're going to revisit it in September, and hopefully we can come up with a date at that point. But right now we're not doing it in June. We know that much.
Okay. The next item.
No, wait a sec, on Jarvis
Patrick?
Farm.
Yes.
What's the status of putting parking in there that will be amenable to not polluting the aquifer? Maybe the town administrator could answer that. Since they're using it for all summer long and we're having cars parked there.
Yeah, I thought you brought this up maybe 2 or 3 years ago and we never pursued it. Does the commissioners want us to pursue this now again?
Well, this commissioner does.
I do think I recall Rick mentioning that he was pursuing something within the past year. I don't know, Rick, is that true?
Right, we've not been able to finalize the numbers yet. The question is, how are we gonna finance it? I mean, does sewer and water wanna finance the paving of the lot and putting in a tight drainage system, or would you be looking for somebody else to fund that? That's the big question.
It should be fun. It should be funded by the people who park there. So
We can put that on
whenever-
a future meeting agenda. There is a question, I think, Rick, that maybe you've mentioned before. The parking is underneath the electric company's high tension wires. Is there some issue with that, or is that not an issue?
No, there was definitely an issue with it.
All right, so I think that, Mary, if you can put that on our next agenda, because it's not something. Okay. Next item is, we got a nice letter in recognition of Mary Timilty giving excellent customer service. And I think it'd be nice of us to send an acknowledgement to Mary, thanking her for her continued efforts providing excellent customer service to our water and sewer customers. So I'll make a motion that we do send something to Mary, a note thanking her for her efforts, and have it added into her personnel file.
Yeah,
I'll
second that. Pour it on, Bill. She's sitting in the next office listening.
I couldn't second it fast enough.
She's been very helpful to me, so I wanted to make sure that we do something. So, all right.
She does a great job.
Next item is the MWA assessment
Bill, you
change.
need a vote on that motion.
Oh, we do. I thought this was going to be unanimous anyways, but all those in
I
favor,
assume so.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Passanello, aye.
Let's do, okay, you have to announce your name, so John has.
Yeager, aye.
Bill Abbott, aye. Pat?
Passanello, aye.
Glenn?
Aye.
And John Spillane.
Louder, John.
Aye.
Excellent. I thought we had a dissent there. Okay, the next item is the MWA assessment change, allowing deferral of the phase 10 and 11 payments that Pat brought to us. Pat, do you want to add anything?
No, I think I sent you all a email concerning what they told me at the meeting.
Okay.
No, I don't, we'll just waste the time to say it again.
All right, so as I understand it, it's an option as to whether we want to defer the payments or not.
Quite honestly, Bill, I don't think you need to. They're not that high.
That was my thought also, but I thought we had the financial experts here with us, Marilyn.
Yeah, Marilyn could probably answer that question better than what the impact of the rate would be if you take that loan portion of that payment out. But it's kind of negligible, I thought.
I would,
We make the payments every month now over the 10 months. I don't see where we'd have a problem next year.
Well, no, that's the MWRA assessment. I think the phase 10 and 11 financial
Those
assistance.
payments?
Yes,
Yeah, they're small. We'll be fine.
yeah.
okay, so we will not opt to defer, we'll just keep paying because they are, as Rick mentioned, they are
They're
relatively
figured in the
small.
budget, we're fine.
Yeah. The next item is a development in Dover to supply water to 39 apartments that are being constructed. And it seems that this law back in 1982, dealing with the Texaco gas spill, somehow requires us to provide water not only to those customers who were affected at that time, but additional buildings that were constructed, and lists some parcels. And I'm assuming, although I don't know this for certain, that the proposed apartments is on at least one of those parcels. So I think, unless I'm misunderstanding it, the way the law is, we are required to provide them with Walpole water at in-town rates. And if that's so, I think I'd like us to investigate getting that law changed. I understand, providing water to the customers that were affected back in 1982. But, if somebody's building something new at this point, it seems going a little bit beyond what the original intent of the law is.
I was there when they did, this was the Texaco gasoline oil spill. And I remember that the whole point of that legislation from our great general court was that they wanted, since this part of Dover has groundwater, that's for wells, they felt that because it was polluted, that they'd have access to the Walpole Municipal Service. And I think that's going to hold. But what I'm thinking also is that if they're building all these units, I think it's time for us to make sure that every single unit they put in on our water system has an individual meter. I think that's the best we're going to do. They're not exempt from our rules and regulations, but I think we do have to supply that geographical area with municipal water.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Glenn?
do you have any information on alternative sources of water? I know the surrounding developments in the area must get water from the town of Dover, I'm assuming?
They have a private water company. I don't know, Rick, if you know anything about it, or Bernie, if you know anything about that private water company.
Sorry, I don't have any information about this area. Other than I know that there was that spill and that's how the Texaco booster station came about and things of that nature, but I don't have any knowledge of this.
Yeah, these proposed buildings sit on the parcels that were identified in the legislation as those that are entitled to Walpole water. So the parcel 25010 and 25011.
Yep.
We're legally obligated to provide them with water. Now, as you said, Bill, they have to abide by the rules and regulations and pay any, applicable fees, but we are obligated to provide them with water. So like 6 or 7 parcels. The alternative water supply would be Dover Water Company, and I don't know as if they go that far into Dover.
John Hassaneka?
I would just say 2 things. Maybe we just could confirm for our next meeting the legal parameter and responsibility we have under that special legislation, so we know if there's other parcels. But the 39 units in themselves may actually be a blessing if we're looking to sell some more water here and get some revenues. And if we can do what Patrick said, that's probably economically favorable for the water operation as far as our budget goes.
Well, that's true. I don't think
it's a finite set of parcels, and there's only 3 parcels or so involved, and maybe that's not worth arguing about.
9. There are 9 total parcels that we're obligated to provide water to.
Yeah, it's a public health issue. I mean, we can think of it the other side instead of anti-development. You want to kill people with drinking poison water, whether they technically live in Dover or Walpole.
I guess my thoughts would be is that the original intent was that there was some lots, existing homes or businesses or whatever that were affected, and this was the obvious place to get the water in a short order. But here it's almost 40 years later, and we're still set up to have to provide water to other parties. And it would seem to me that if that land was all swampland or something, they wouldn't be able to build it. Well, it doesn't happen to have, at least currently, public water supply, and so it's not buildable. It's not buildable. I know that there's a lot of sentiment of and members in the town meeting of why are we supplying water to non-Walpole customers, and even though in this case, we got a law that says we have to. I'm just questioning, do we have to keep doing it, if we could get the law changed?
But the way I read
Chairman.
it, we're only obligated to provide water to the buildings that were standing on the parcels as of that June 29th, 81 date. This looks like an expansion of the property to me. Looks like a tear down and a reconstruction. So I think it might be a horse of a different color. We just need to research it a little bit more.
Okay, because it says to supply water to any additional or replacement buildings. Okay, so if
That's
they're tearing down, but additional buildings could be additional to what was there in 1982, so.
I wouldn't
Well,
Unless
consider
the board's not interested in this, that was just my thought that, you know, it's, I guess, what, 38 years later, and do we want to keep doing that? And I don't know how big these lots are. Is there additional buildings that could be put on?
Well, if I could, the statement about the town of Walpole shall supply water to other buildings, that's other buildings that are outside of these parcels. That's the way I interpret that. We're obligated to provide water to the buildings that were standing on those parcels in 1981.
Okay,
Beyond that, I don't feel that we're obligated to provide water to any of them.
it says, as I'm reading it, the town of Walpole should supply water to other buildings in the town of Dover only if the town of Dover Board of Selectmen by majority vote authorizes the town of Walpole to supply water to any additional or replacement buildings hereto constructed on any parcel of land. Okay, it says listed in this section, which I guess would pertain only to those parcels, so.
Yeah. Let's just have council look at it.
I was just gonna say that, Bill. Do you mind giving us a couple weeks and we'll have
Yeah.
KP look at it?
All right, Mary, why don't you put
And
that on the agenda?
one more thing there.
Yes, Pat?
You know that if we do, when we do supply them with water, the town of Walpole will own the infrastructure. Because if you look at paragraph, section 1, it says that the town will own the water mains and the, whatever, the supply lines.
We already do.
So that's why I'd like to see each unit have its own meter.
No, we own the
There'll be
water
a
main that's
Walpole
on,
meter.
we own the water main that's on County Street. We already own that. We're not
Okay,
gonna
so
own
that's
anything in
done.
private property.
Well, it would be interesting, because if typically an apartment building, they wouldn't have individual meters. So Jim, if you could add that to the list, could we insist that each unit have its own water meter and its own account? Would bring in additional revenue to us, or maybe we wouldn't be able to do that. I don't know, but it's
We can certainly ask.
okay. Any other thoughts, questions on this item?
Just one other thing, we should check to see if it's a 40B. If it's a 40B, we should get credit for the units.
Good idea. Glenn?
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree that it wasn't the original intent of the law to allow, to supply water to a major redevelopment 40 years later, and that our first priority should be the town of Walpole, not the town of Dover. So I just want to agree with those sentiments.
Any thought? Go ahead.
Just wanted to say that, you know, because you provided them water doesn't mean they're gonna pay it and we're gonna be able to collect it. And being out of town, we won't be able to lean the water onto a real estate bill. So it's a big process trying to collect water from out of town people that don't pay.
Well, we
No,
have
but we
done,
can turn it off.
well, we can,
We're reluctant to do that.
the other thing that we've done for the town of Norfolk is that some of the customers, we bill the town of Norfolk. And so I believe that was something that we wanted to do with the customers in Sharon, and then they decided to provide water. But I think we've had no problem collecting from the town of Norfolk, and maybe we could say that make the arrangement that the town of Dover is obligated to pay, and let them collect, you know, from the
Just didn't
residents.
want another McMorgan's.
Yes, exactly.
And we do this with Medfield. I think we do it with Sharon. And maybe, do we do it with Foxborough? I'm not sure.
I don't think we provide any water. We do have sewer with
But
anyways,
I know Medfield has, there's at least one house in Medfield that
Okay.
has Walpole water.
With Jim, some more items just to make sure that we cover all the bases there. Okay, the next item on our agenda is, it's listed as rate hearing. Just want to make it clear, this isn't the rate hearing. The reason we want to discuss this is we haven't met in quite some time and want to get a chance for the commission to see what sort of rates we're looking at and maybe some additional thoughts. The first item that's provided was the sewer rate worksheet, and I'd like to just postpone that until we finish talking about water. Rick, I can see you wanted to speak, or no? Okay.
Nope.
The administration has
Mr.
provided.
Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, well, one of the things, while we're looking at these, perhaps we should have a screen, a separate screen, so that we can project up the things we're talking about, so the people at home can see what's happening. As you can see, I think that's upside down, actually.
Well,
But there should be another screen. At my other meeting with NWRA, every time they talked about a document, they put it up on a separate screen that would show up as one of the screens here.
No,
Can we do that? There must be a way to be able to do that.
Jim?
We can certainly do that. I didn't set it up for this meeting, but that's
Yeah.
easy enough. Again, that last Zoom meeting I was on, the building commissioner shared some plans. So when you guys have your formal discussion about the rates, we can for sure have that available.
I do have the ability to share a screen because I've done made some suggestions on the water rates, and we'll be able to share my screen, so you'll be able to see that. The reason I want to hold off on the sewer is that like 80% of it is MWA assessment. They're looking at a reduction, probably isn't going to be a whole lot of discussion there. So I wanted, if we can skip over to the water, and as I had started to say, the administration initially provided a proposed both water and sewer rate recommendations. And at the same time, I was working on some, just looking at the revenue, where that was coming. And I've exchanged my thoughts with Rick, Jody, and Marilyn back and forth a few times. And so the information that you have in your packet is really what was the situation at the time when Mary had to put the packages together. So there has been some changes. I won't spend a whole lot of time on what I wrote up because it's now sort of outdated. But what you want to look at, if you look at the proposed water rates that they proposed, you'll see that the form looks very much like it has in the past, certainly for expenses. But in the area of revenues, we used to just list water miscellaneous receipts that really had a number of items. And what I'd suggested, and it looks like we're going to do that, we're breaking that out in detail. So you'd see the estimated entrance fees, the testing fees, penalties and interest, and there's also a missing item here, the liens. So we can actually see what all the revenue that gets reported to meet our revenue target. So the first thing that I attempted to do was just looked at doing it the way we had done in the past, with the exception of changing the estimated consumption, because we've been really so far off. And I think I'm going to try and share my screen here. We'll see how that works. Can anybody see this graph?
No.
Yes. No? Well, it's in your package there where it says actual and estimated consumption. Let me see, there must be a way that I can share my screen. I think I click that and then, here we go. All right. Can you see the screen now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
From fiscal year 14, which is the last rate worksheet that I could find, we've been using 88 million cubic feet as the number that we would use for an estimated consumption. From FY17 to the present, we haven't sold that amount of water, and as a result, we've come up short on the revenue that we projected for rates. And as you can see, it's been going down. The Abrams Group, I believe it probably in November or December, came up with an estimate that for the current fiscal year, it was going to be around 71,000. I think it's probably higher than that because after they'd come up with their estimate, we'd had a couple of big months revenue-wise. But just continuing the trend, it looks like that we more likely would be using either like 76 million or 73 million. I sent this graph to Bernie and Rick to get their thoughts, and the answer that came back is that they thought that the 73 million cubic feet was a more accurate figure. And that's the number I think that we should probably use so that we don't end up coming up short on the revenue that we generate with rates. When you start using a smaller number, of course, your expenses are remain essentially the same. The rate has to go up. So anyways, during the past year, you remember, we had discussed a number of approaches to doing the rates, talked about a condo rate, a senior citizen or a low income rate, the ready to serve, which is a per bill charge, as well as increasing the commercial rates. And I started to look into these approaches, and after talking to Marilyn and Lisa just to find out how long it would take to do any one of these options, it turned based on the staff limitations due to the virus, as well as we have some limited internal knowledge of the internals of Munis in this particular areas that would be affected. It became clear that we're not going to be able to do any of those options with the exception of addressing the commercial rates. And that's where I think that we want to look for in raising some additional revenue. So what I did is just using the 73 million and following the as a consumption estimate, and then using the same approach we'd used in the past, and it came up with like a 17.2% rate increase, which I was pretty sure was not going to be acceptable to the commissioners. I also attempted to get a better estimate, trying to recognize that in the first quarter of any fiscal year, really we're billing for rate water that was used in the prior fiscal year, which has lower rates. I think that Marilyn's convinced me that it's probably, we end up with estimates on estimates. The other thing that looked at is, okay, if we just increase the commercial tier 3 and 4 rates to match the residential rates, that sort of matches what we did when we were using the flat rates. Everybody paid the same rate. And the reason looking at only tier 3 and 4 is we already matched the residential rates for tier 1 and 2. When I looked at that, it certainly raises a lot of revenue. It would mean an overall rate increase of maybe around 5.2%, but it really puts a large burden on what turns out to be about 208 commercial customers, particularly those who get into tier 4. Now, a while back, I'm not sure what we were talking about at that point, but Glenn had mentioned that maybe we could look at on one of these approaches that we were considering doing it in steps. In other words, get partway one year and then a subsequent year, get to where we really want to be. And so I decided, okay, what would it look like? What would the rates look like if we got the tier 3 and 4 commercial rates halfway to the residential rates? And that turned out to bring the rate down to about 11%. And the meeting package went out, but the conversations with Rick and Jody and Marilyn continued. And some of the considerations was putting in 250 or 300,000 from our water retained earnings to adjust for a lower contribution from the commercial 3 and 4 tiers. And that ended up with a 4.79 rate increase. And I can show you a spreadsheet. I think if we just do this right, do you see a spreadsheet?
Not yet.
Nope.
You don't. You want, since you are sharing the screen.
It's the first screen you put up, Bill.
Oh, it's still there? All right, I'm
Yes.
going to stop sharing and then I'm going to share again. All right, how about now?
Got it.
Okay. The expenses are the same as they are on all of the sheets, what was proposed, what was shows in the packets that you sent out. And the breakdown for the MWPAT is there, estimated entrance fees, testing fees. The liens, Maryland estimated 200,000 penalties and interest. What I was suggesting is if you use 300,000 of retained earnings, and then for the increase of the commercial tier 3 and 4 rates, raising $100,000, I believe it would raise more, but I'm trying to be conservative, in using the estimated consumption of 73 million, it comes up with a rate increase of 4.79%, and the total amount of money raised is actually $577. Again, there's lots of estimates. Basically all the revenue is always based on some sort of an estimate. So just want to get any thoughts on where we're looking at this point?
I guess my first comment, if I may,
Yes.
is on the consumption estimate. 73 million seems rather conservative, which I could see why we would want to be conservative considering we've overshot for several years now. But it seems like we might be undershooting. I know we can't really say for sure because we're trying to, make an estimate of an estimate, but it just seems like it's a low number, and I could see why we're doing it, and I could see proposing. Sorry for the background noise. I could see proposing the possibility of maybe a middle ground of a little bit higher, closer to 76 or 78 million.
Well, let me just change it to 76. I don't know, Rick, Bernie, you can chime in if you think that we're. That if you go to 76, it means we're basically using the same rates.
Okay, so I'm open to I guess I'm seeing an almost 5% rate increase, and until we have the opportunity to implement a ready to serve charge, if that's something that we decide to do, which I know we're not looking to do it this year, or at least not in the next couple months. I guess I could see the possibility, and I'd like to hear what other people think of using a little bit more retained earnings, and maybe getting that 76 down to 74, something in between the 73 and make up the difference with a little bit more retained earnings use.
Right. First, I guess a question in terms of increasing the commercial rates in tiers 3 and 4, getting partway to parity with the residential rates. Is there any thoughts, concerns on that?
I'll just say real quick, I like the incremental approach, but I'll let other people talk.
Anyone else have any comments, thoughts? I'm guessing not. Rick or Bernie, your thoughts on the estimated consumption number? I think 76 million is probably too high again.
I believe it's too high, Bill. I like the 73.
you're still there.
Well, given the downward trend, I'm in favor of the 73 as well. I mean, there's new apartment complexes are going to come online, but I don't think they're going to bring a whole lot in terms of usage.
I agree.
But I think 73 million is a good number.
Okay.
I agree.
And I would agree that these apartment complexes going by frequently, and we're only 6 weeks away from the new fiscal year. It'd be surprised when we're actually going to see anybody in any of the 3 developments that are, in the center of town.
Bill, I can tell you that they're going a lot slower as far as rental and occupying, and obviously, for obvious reasons, that's the case.
That makes sense.
Okay. Anyone else have any thought on the estimated consumption number? I'd be leaning towards the 73.
On the 100,000.
Pardon me?
I have a question on the 100,000.
Yes,
My understanding, if you're increasing the tier 3 and tier 4 rate
right.
to bring in, say, that 100,000, but that's an estimate. And then you're lowering what is to be brought in by the ratepayers by that 100,000. It's like you're using that 100,000 twice. Your rate,
No,
you're lowering your rate to include the fact that you think you're going to get that 100,000, but that's
Right.
not an actual.
well, but the rate that we're charging, and it was in the last email that I sent out, we would increase the commercial, all the rates by whatever the percent is, say the 4.79 or whatever the number ends up. And then we would look and see, all right, what is the commercial tier 3 rate and what's the residential? Get the difference, split it, and say, okay, that's going to be the new commercial rate. In other words, getting us halfway. And so the rates would have been figured initially without the 100,000, but once you've raised the rates, and I have actually, I think I'm lowballing the 100,000 because when I see it, it's closer to 400,000. But I prefer to be conservative on this, given that our track record for the last 4 years has not been great. So I think that we will raise additional rates because we're going to adjust the rates, to bring in afterwards.
Bring in more revenue because you adjusted your rate to do that. And then to take that 100,000 out, I don't know, I just think.
Okay, well, let me just.
This year and see what you actually get in with.
All right, if we.
We don't know what these businesses are gonna be doing to even see if they go up to that tier 4 this year.
All right, so if we bring that down to 0, and I think I understand what you're talking about, Marilyn, and I thought I understood what you'd written last week. That would be a result of a rate increase of 7.6%. We could adjust the water retained earnings, and now that brings up a question: does people have concern about using water retained earnings? I don't think it's a good idea to. Certainly, you don't want to be doing that year after year. It's something we would use for capital projects. But if we're trying to make some dramatic adjustment.
We've been saying for years we're low and we haven't been bringing in the revenue. At some point, you're going to have to raise your rate higher than 3%.
Oh, I understand. And I guess the question is, do we want to go right to 7% increase, or and that 7% is depending on 300,000 from water retained earnings. And I agree with you, Marilyn. You make a big adjustment to correct the consumption estimate, and it's an estimate that we know is not correct. If you lower it, the rate has to increase because you're looking at the same expenses.
Right.
I'd like to hear some thoughts from others as to the direction. Mr. Hassenegger, since you're the first picture in my screen.
Well, I'll check with the Economic Development Commission about how they react to the change, to the proposal. I don't want to speak on behalf of others, What you've proposed, in my mind, it seems quite reasonable, Bill. It's sort of a mid,
Getting
compromise.
halfway there at this point and
Yeah, it's
addressing
halfway.
it later.
Yeah, which I agree, because we don't know the dynamics of the growth of water use and things coming online and not coming online and some of the other variables. We don't know which way the arrow is going to point in a year.
I did use real actual numbers for a full quarter's actual consumption commitment sheets when I came up with my estimate, and then I backed it down just to be conservative there.
Yeah.
Glenn, you, I think, had already spoken. John Spillane?
As far as I'm concerned, Bill, I go back to the flat rate.
Yeah, I know that's your preference there. Patrick, your thoughts?
Well, excuse me. I think the pain should be spread out.
Okay.
It probably makes sense that we sort of split it halfway for the time being, and we'll get to where we need to get, because it'll take a little longer. But I think that'll be less painful for many people.
All right, Rick, and then Bernie?
I know this doesn't happen often, but I agree with Commissioner Fassanello.
I know, and as Pat knows, whenever he and I agree, we immediately each say we want to change our position on the thing. But, okay, Mr. Jim Johnson?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. Surprisingly, I agree with Pat too, so.
Whoa.
All right, wait a minute. I've got to make some changes here because there's too much going in the wrong direction. All right, and Marilyn and Jody?
Well, you'll have to forgive me because I was interrupted and I didn't hear the beginning of the conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to take that you agree with us.
No, I'm not going on record as agreeing with you on that.
No, by making it spread out, is that by using the retained earnings?
Yes.
Spread it out, so using the 300,000?
Yes, this as the spreadsheet shows right now. I assume you can see I've eliminated the additional increase. I believe we will have additional revenue, but I know that you and I disagree on that. So I'm going with yours to say 0, just to be conservative here.
Okay, I just wanted to know where we were at.
And this produces a rate increase of just over 7%, and that's across the board. And the commercial, of course, gets another bump once we've got the, actually I can show you what it looks like. Here's what the current rates are, and these are the adjusted rates. And as you can see on the residential and commercial, so like in residential, most of the people, actually everybody goes through the first tier. It's maybe about $3.50 roughly increase. The same, and you can see the commercial rate currently and what is being proposed. They're the same, and right now the commercial rates at 3 and 4 are 66, 85, and 69. They go to 81 and 93, and then my thought would be in the subsequent year we would make the next leap to get them matching, and by doing that, and we get the revenue that I think we'll do, I think we can avoid having to use retained earnings. And that I don't think is a good idea because we're not doing any capital this year, and it doesn't mean that things, stay the same. We had to repair, one of the filters at Delaney plant. I think, Rick, you've mentioned that we probably need to do something on the others. Scott has mentioned we're halfway through or partway through the SCADA system upgrade, and there's those PLCs that the manufacturer doesn't make anymore. I mean, you could just go on and on. There are things that, basically we're, by not doing any capital this year, we're pushing back further.
Absolutely.
By a year. And
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I just want to point out that I don't have the debt budget in front of me, but the last time I looked at it, it looked like we had a pretty steep drop off in our debt budget payments for projects that were gonna be paid off, I think around 2024.
2024, fiscal year 2024. And that
Something to look forward to.
Yes, I'm thinking if we decide to activate Minebrook 4,
Yep.
that would maybe be a good opportunity at that point, because that would be a rather large expenditure there. But, you know, but just looking down the road, I don't think you want to use retained earnings over and over every year, because you'll end up with what we saw with the Abrams report. Doesn't take long before you don't have any retained earnings left. So,
I agree.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can,
yes,
we should, I want to caution about using retained earnings, especially with this year. You know, I can't predict what it's going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be as much as it has been in the past. So we have to be careful.
I'm looking at it, Jody, the same way we were going to have in Article 7. We have, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like $2.7 million worth of retained earnings right
Just
now.
about that.
So, you know, we'd be taking, it's real money that we know exists. That's about the only thing of the revenue, you know, whether it's estimated rent, entrance fees, testing fees, they're all estimates, including the consumption. The only one that we would know for certain would be the 300,000 out of retained earnings, because it's money we actually have. Does that answer your concerns, Jody?
It doesn't lessen my concern. I would say that where this year we're not really, I don't see us having all that much. And then rolling into next year, okay, we don't know what next year is going to bring, you know, with everything that's been going on as well. And, you know, hopefully people will be paying their bills, but, you know, you don't know with unemployment so high and so forth. So I would just be concerned about, you know, next year, the year after, because you are going to have, you know, I know our debt is lower, but at some point, you know, there's going to be, like you just talked about, some projects coming on. So we
Right.
need to make sure that, you know, we're squirreling away a little bit.
Well, I think the only thing I would just emphasize is the 300,000 is not revenue that I'm expecting we'll generate. It's revenue, it's from revenue we already have.
Right,
the
I understand
retained
that.
earnings. So, and my caution was, I don't like, you know, doing this, but I think to come up with something reasonable for rates, that it's okay to do it, you know, on a one-time basis, which we were going to do with Article 7 if it turned out that the entrance fees and, you know, some of the other things that are going to make us potentially, you know, meet the overall revenue target. So anyways, any other thoughts on this? We can use this as the basis for the water rate hearing, which I'd like to propose that we have on June 8th, which would be our normal meeting in June, our first normal meeting. I don't know if that's too much of a rush. Mary, I don't think you'd find it as an issue, because we need 2 weeks.
2 weeks, right,
There's more than 2 weeks.
right. That shouldn't be an issue.
No,
But
Bill,
Bill-
on my end, I'm fine with that.
Bill, could you send me these sheets too?
Yes, I can. What you're seeing right here?
Yeah, what you got
Okay.
on.
Yes, I can send that, and I'll double check the arithmetic, but I tied it in so that you change one thing, it changes,
Okay.
you know, all the future rates, so. Okay, any further questions on that? If not, we could go to the sewer and what was being proposed, which was a reduction of 2.48%. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I wouldn't be so quick to reduce it, because you're gonna get hit with that assessment again next year. It's gonna go up. They're gonna get their money somehow, some way. Just a deferral. So I would caution you against lowering it too much.
All right. Do we have would you recommend that we just keep it even at, I believe that would be the $94.21?
I would at this point, but let's just check the numbers, the consumption numbers.
Okay, that a good point there, Rick. I also looked at the consumption numbers for sewer, and we, at least since fiscal year 2014, we've been using the 52 million number. I don't know if that number needs to be adjusted. I think it might actually potentially increase. Do we have more people on sewer than we would have back then?
Right, we've got more people on sewer, and Siemens has expanded their operation, and Hollingsworth and Bose is still operating, the two major contributors, so. We'll check the numbers and see what we can come up with, and see if we can get, as to whether that's a good number or not.
All right, I'll ask the commissioners, any issues with either going with the 2.48% reduction or a no increase at all, no reduction, no increase. And we'll get it nailed down. So in other words, there's not going to be a big change one way or the other. Patrick?
Well, companies, their waste material is a little different from homes.
Right.
And I was curious, trying to do a little bit of research on how much does it cost for Deer Island to process industrial waste versus, let's say, domestic waste. And I really don't have any figures right now, but I'm working on it. But I think that if the industrial waste is costing more and it's pushing up our assessment, then that should be paid for by the people who generate that type of waste. That's my thoughts.
Rick, don't they make some adjustment? And it's a good point, Pat, but for some reason, it strikes me that certainly you have to get permission from the MWA to put industrial waste, because they want to know what the heck it is. It could be, could be just as clean water, or it could be some awful thing that kills all the little bugs that you're depending on to, clean up the sewage in the treatment plant. Rick, do you remember if there's anything special in our assessment?
The two major contributors operate under permits that are issued by the MWRA with their toxic reduction discharge permits.
So does that mean that they're required to clean up their septic to some extent before it goes into the system?
It does. There are certain things that they're prohibited from discharging, and other things that they're prohibited from discharging at certain levels. As part of the MWRA assessment, concentration is one of the components that determines the assessment for the communities.
All right. Well, Pat, if you could keep looking at it, it may take longer and we do need to have a rate hearing because the fiscal year will be beginning. Mr. Hassenjäger, any concern with either a 2.48% reduction or no reduction when we come to the actual rate hearing?
Yeah, I would not go with a reduction.
All right. Glenn?
So I just want to make sure I understand the question. So is the reduction based on if we get a decrease in our MWRA assessment that we don't know about yet?
No, we know about it. We got a decrease in the MWRA assessment.
Minus 0.7.
They adjusted our assessment by, I believe, like $170,000. They went down from a 3.8% increase to a 0.7% increase for this year. My point is that sooner or later, they're going to recover that money, and it's going to be through the ratepayers and through those assessments once again, which is why I would caution you against reducing your current rate, because what's going to happen is you're going to get a tremendous spike. Once MWRA comes looking for their money, we're going to get that tremendous spike again.
All right. John Spillane?
Well, I have a
Glenn.
question.
Glenn,
So
if you could continue.
Thanks. Yeah, so the negative 2.5% reduction would result in an increase in our retained earnings, or I suppose if we do a 0% reduction, would we increase our retained earnings for sewer?
No, because it's been removed from the budget. that $170,000, the budget's been adjusted already.
Okay. Okay, 0% makes sense to me.
Don Spillane?
No reduction.
I didn't hear you, John.
He said no reduction.
No reduction. All right. So why don't we, we'll go with the no reduction. We've addressed what we find acceptable on the water and what's acceptable on the sewer. The final item is the I&I change that think that we should make. Now that we've settled the I&I suits, the whole reason that we was in trouble there is that the way we charge the fee is an unlawful fee, and that the people paying the fee don't get any specific benefit. And what I've proposed and proposed before, we had this cancellation of meetings due to the virus, is that we eliminate the I&I fee and use the MWA loan grant programs as the source of revenue for our I&I removal program. The DEP only requires that you have a program and that it's funded. Using the MWA, we will certainly have a program, and using the funds from the grant loan program constitutes a revenue source. And phase 10 and 11, I think it was like 1.2 million roughly that we were getting from those two phases. And then it eliminates the possibility of somebody else looking for the same settlement that we had to make with the three big developers who sued us.
Well, it wasn't alleged to be an illegal fee. It was alleged to be an illegal tax.
Yeah, right. That's
so
correct.
It wasn't an illegal fee.
Right, but to be legal, a fee must provide specific.
Yeah, right. We know. We got all that, but I mean.
Yeah. So I misspoke. Should have said an unlawful tax. You're right. Any concerns, thoughts on that? We have, and we will still have the revenue that we've collected under the old rules. So we will have more revenue. I mean, we already have a problem. Unless it's a small project, we can't find the sources of inflow and infiltration for a large project to correct.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Glenn.
So it sounds to me like we're going to replace it with a town-wide I&I fee that's currently $0, and we'll implement an increase in that as needed.
Well, we would use the MWA loan grant program,
right?
Which is, and that's money that the MWA provides. 75% of it's a grant, and 25% of it is a low interest or no interest loan spread over 10 years, and it is a very small amount.
So we expect that to be enough, I guess is my point. That would be sufficient.
Yes, I believe it would be sufficient, particularly when we have over $2 million in the account already.
Mr. Chairman?
Patrick?
Yeah, if we're going to start to lower the I&I, or get rid of it, or do whatever, I think, it exists for a reason. And I know that MWRA has interest in us reducing the amount that we bring to Deer Island. But I think that we're going to have to start looking at the entrance fee and make the entrance fee more real in that the costs that are incurred by somebody joining our sewer system, I don't think in the past has been realistic. I think the entrance fee has been too little. The benefits of joining the sewer system needs to be looked at, and the fee needs to reflect the benefits that people who use the sewer, who join the sewer, join. Because don't forget, all this infrastructure has been paid for. and people are coming onto it, and they, need to pay their fair share and
Well,
not let that
I
amount
think
be.
Yeah, it's been 5 years since Woodcock and Associates provided us with the entrance fees that we use for both water and sewer. And so maybe your thought of looking at that, maybe having Woodcock and Associates, if they still exist, or somebody like that come in and do a review of the entrance fees.
Yeah,
I
Bill,
don't
I
want
think,
company-
it would definitely require, an analysis of other communities and what's a global, appropriate rate to use for,
Well, if I remember from 2015, it was an elaborate, process that they came up with. And I don't think they look at what others are doing. And I'm not sure it's relevant what some other communities charging. It's more of what's the appropriate entrance fee for our system as it's constituted and
Well,
the impact.
I think, Bill, that, to give you an example, Siemens has done a couple of expansions, and they've chosen, even though we've had available sites in Walpole, they've gone to other towns, including Norwood.
Right.
And part of that is based on the rates.
Well, then,
So, I
when-
mean, if we have, you're looking at it from one point of view.
Yeah.
Operating departments of the town of Walpole aren't really cash cows or profit centers for the community. And, we have to have a business base to provide employment and to provide economic welfare for the citizens in the community, not so much government.
yeah.
But I don't think having outlier rates is a good, and certainly the Economic Development Commission would object to that kind of thinking.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good point, John. And I think if we can get, someone like Woodcock and Associates to come and do a review, and I think probably after 5 years, it's probably worthwhile. Bernie or Rick, any thoughts on that?
Rick, any thoughts on this?
I think you should just leave, the rates are fine, Bill. I mean, I'm sorry, the II, I would go with the MWRA.
Okay. In terms of having, and this would be separate from the rate review because it takes some time, looking at having a consultant come and look at our entrance fees since they are based on something we did 5 years ago. And I know we periodically would do this, and it probably is about time anyways.
Would you like to go out with an RFP for that?
I'd like Rick's thoughts and other commissioners' thoughts also, but
Yeah, we can certainly send out an RFP, Bill. We know one company that we probably won't.
yes.
I thought that might come up in conversation.
Okay.
But in terms of I&I, getting back to the I&I, I agree that we should use the MWRA money. Eventually, that's going to dry up as well. The rumor has it that there's strictly going to be loans at some point in time. They're going to take the grant portion of it out. So what we'll have to do is incorporate that into the sewer rate, because the basis of the argument with the three people that filed the suits was that it was
Not spread out.
the whole town was benefiting, yet they were paying for it. So
Exactly. It's an unlawful tax in that they're not receiving, the benefits being received by the whole community, not, the developer.
right. So therefore, if it had always been included in the rate, there would have been no basis for their argument.
Right.
So as far as the entrance fees go, I believe they're pretty close to where they should be, but we can certainly have the Woodcock has retired. There's another company, Raftellus, David Fox has taken over for Chris Woodcock. So we can certainly reach out to him and get a sense of, what it would cost us.
Okay. Any further discussion on the I&I? And If not, then I'd like to make a motion that we have a rate hearing on June 8th to set the FY21 water rates, sewer rates, and eliminate the I&I fee from our regulations.
I'll second.
All right, we got a second on that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Bill Abbott? Patrick?
Fastenello, aye.
Glenn?
Glenn Maffey, aye.
John Hessenjager?
Aye.
And John Spillane?
Line aye.
Okay, then we have 5-0-0. The only remaining thing, Patrick, you would ask me, and I thought we would bring it up, is do we know, Mary, or do we know if the rec department intends to run the summer camp at Jarvis Farm?
I can weigh in on that. We don't know. We're planning as if we're gonna have it, but we won't know until phase 2 what that consists of as far as camps and everything. So we're
Okay.
planning as if, but they all understand that, and the pools are very much up in the air.
Okay, all right. We know what the sewer rate was. It seemed that the majority was a 0 increase or no decrease, no increase. And the water is what you're looking at now. And other than that, I don't believe there's anything else that we need to discuss, or we've completed the entire agenda.
Move to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second, Glenn Maffey.
All right, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Fastenello, aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
Glenn,
Aye.
John Spillane,
Aye.
and John Hessenjager.
Aye.
Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.